Like their running mates, JD Vance and Tim Walz are focusing on battleground states today. Both candidates appear to be capitalizing on momentum from last night's debate here at CBS. Senator Vance is campaigning in Michigan today, giving a speech on manufacturing and holding a campaign rally. And Governor Walz is traveling around southeastern Pennsylvania on a bus tour.
Last night's debate was the one and only planned face-off between Vance and Walz before Election Day. For 90 minutes, the vice presidential nominees took on the major issues, but they also didn't hesitate to call each other out.
Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership.
Effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before.
I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years?
We have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies.
The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography?
My party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us.
Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
So those are some of the highlights, and this is the result. Fresh new CBS News polling shows 42% of debate watchers think JD Vance won, while 41% thought the opposite, that Tim Walz won.
CBS News political reporter Zak Hudak is here with us in Studio 57 with more. So, Zak, everybody seems to be most surprised, really, about how civil the tone was in this debate. More so, obviously, than a lot of the campaign rhetoric that we've heard out on the campaign trail. How much of this do you think was a genuine reflection versus coaching? We know that some of the feel about JD Vance hasn't necessarily been positive going into this. People feel much more positive coming out of this. And might this set the tone for a correction in a way?
It is, I think, a combination of both factors. I think that these candidates, particularly Vance, knew that it was in their interest to come out and appear friendly and like they get along. But at the same time, I think there's also a factor that these are two guys from the Midwest who, even though they have a lot different, they have a lot in common. The moment that really stood out to me was when Governor Walz was talking about his son witnessing a shooting at a community center. And Senator Vance had this really natural reaction where he said, I didn't know that. I'm so sorry to hear that. And I think when we talk to these swing voters in these key battleground states, the thing that comes up again and again is that they want to see a return to civility in politics. So when we had moments like that last night, I think it helped both of these guys tremendously.
Well, Zach, I want to drill down on that point specifically because it wasn't as if they were trying to tear each other down. It seemed more as if they were shaking hands, agreeing with each other on some points. And I wonder if it's because of that common background of being from the Midwest and the common demographic they're aiming to win over. Do you think that was part of the strategy, that they're basically trying to win the same audience?
I think that is completely the case. Both of these campaigns know that they need to do well in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. If you look at the pick of Governor Walz, a factor in that was that Minnesota was becoming somewhat vulnerable for Democrats, so that helped shore that up. So these picks, both of them, really aimed specifically at that blue wall, those Rust Belt states that both campaigns see as must-win states.
And as we're talking about must-win states, and Zach, I just have to say, I'm not sure everybody thinks of the Midwest in the same way that you're describing the Midwest there. But there are 7 battleground states that will likely decide the outcome of this. They're very different politically and demographically. And this actually goes to that idea about what is the Midwest? What is the South? How do these two campaigns focus on targeting those very different voters demographically?
I think the place that really represents it best is Pennsylvania, and I'm a little biased toward Pennsylvania. I've covered a lot. I grew up in Pittsburgh, which if you ask people there, is it in the Midwest, you'll get a lot of different answers. I always, when that comes up in a newsroom, say it is a Rust Belt city, which kind of falls in the middle of the Venn diagram, I think, on that. But the issue there, and in many of these Midwestern states, is that you have couple big cities with large urban populations, then you have these really rural areas that have really conservative populations. And you need to wrangle both of those while also getting these suburban voters who have issues like abortion at the very top of mind. And it's a lot of issues that are kind of in contrast with each other, or rather in conflict with each other, I should say. So you're trying to make one group happy, and in doing that, you're making the other side of the state upset.
And Western Pennsylvania different than the eastern part of the state as well.
Yeah.
Very much so, yes. It's Philadelphia versus Pittsburgh. And if you get, I think people forget, Pittsburgh is only about 45 minutes, maybe an hour from West Virginia. I mean, very different place from Philadelphia, which is pretty close to us here in New York.
Yeah.
All great points.
Zak Hudak, thank you.
Great to see you, Zach.
Great to see you guys.